7 more miles to the next town, Emma muttered, squinting at the cracked green highway sign leaning at a tired angle in the ditch. Her backpack cut into her shoulders, straps digging through the thin fabric of her sweatshirt. The bag wasn't heavy with clothes or food. There wasn't much of either left, but with the weight of everything she'd already lost. In her arms, 4-year-old Lily slept in ragged little bursts, her cheek pressed against Emma's collarbone, lips chapped from the cold autumn wind. Emma's phone vibrated. Unknown number. Her thumb hovered. Probably another debt collector. Or, worse, a new number her ex had found, ready to hurl more accusations, more blame, more poison. She almost shoved the phone back into her pocket. But something instinct, desperation, fate, made her swipe. Hello? Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears, rough and strained from too many nights crying into a motel pillow so Lily wouldn't hear. Good afternoon. May I speak with Emma Carter? The man's voice was calm, clipped, like someone used to talking over conference calls and courtroom noise. Who's asking? She shifted Lily higher, the girl's little fingers tightening around the fraying collar of Emma's sweatshirt. As a gust of October wind cut straight through it, the 2-lane road stretched ahead in a lonely ribbon through upstate New York farmland. Flat fields, skeletal trees, no houses, no gas stations, no mercy. My name is Daniel Hayes. I'm an attorney with the firm Hayes & O'Connor, based in Albany. Aha. She adjusted the strap of her backpack again. A truck roared past in the opposite lane, sending a spray of grit that peppered her jeans. I represent the estate of Miss Margaret Lawson, the voice continued. I've been trying to reach you for several weeks, Miss Carter. You've been hard to find. Join the club. He paused, as if recalibrating his tone. You are the sole beneficiary of Ms. Lawson's estate. Emma barked out a laugh, too sharp, too loud. Lily stirred, eyelids fluttering. Right, and I'm the Queen of England. Look, whoever put you up to this, tell them they need new material. I'm not in the mood. This is not a joke, Miss Carter. His tone firmed. You have inherited $48 million. For a second, everything, wind, road noise, her own footsteps, went silent. Emma stopped walking. The world seemed to tilt just enough that she had to shift her stance to keep from dropping Lily. What did you say? $48 million, he repeated. Plus the Lawson residence and certain other assets. We've been attempting to contact you at your last known address in Albany, but our mail has been returned, and your phone numbers have changed. I finally obtained this number through a forwarding request. You've got the wrong Emma Carter, she said, heart pounding. I don't know any. What was the name? Margaret Lawson. No idea who that is. I can't inherit anything from a stranger. There was another pause. Miss Carter, according to Ms. Lawson's instructions, you would not know her name. She made that very clear in her will. Why? That, I think, is a story only you can tell. Emma opened her mouth, then closed it again. The wind whistled across the empty fields, rustling dry corn stalks like brittle paper. $48 million. The number was so big it felt fictional, like something from the YouTube video titles she used to scroll through at 2 a.m. She went from homeless to millionaire overnight. That stuff happened to other people. People who weren't currently walking a highway shoulder with a sleeping kid, half a bottle of water, 12 crumpled dollars, and no plan. If this is real, she said finally, you better start at the beginning. Actually, Ms. Carter, Daniel replied, I think you should. He had no idea that for Emma, the beginning was a night 3 months earlier, standing in a dark kitchen that used to be home, while the fridge hummed uselessly, because there was nothing inside but an open box of baking soda and a single, shriveled apple. 3 months earlier, the power had been shut off that morning. Albany's August heat pressed into the apartment like a living thing, sticky and relentless. The empty air where the ceiling fan used to spin felt like a taunt. Emma stood in the kitchen of what had once been their family apartment, the kind of place that looked decent enough in an online listing. Cozy 2-bedroom near bus line. Great for small family. Back then, she'd believed the pictures. Now, paint peeled in slow curls from the ceiling. The cheap linoleum was cracked and yellowed around the fridge. A roach darted behind the baseboard as she opened the cupboard, hoping for something she'd missed the last 6 times. Half a sleeve of generic saltines. A jar of peanut butter with a knife mark scraped clean against plastic. And that was it. Mom, Emma turned. Lily sat cross-legged on the tile floor, a coloring book spread in front of her, a fistful of broken crayons at her side. The only light in the kitchen came from a battery-powered camping lantern, bought on clearance years ago for a fun backyard adventure that never happened, casting a weird soft glow over everything. Yeah, Bug, how come the lights are still playing hide and seek? Emma swallowed. They're not playing? The electric company turned them off? Like a timeout? Kind of. Did they get mad? Something like that, Emma said. Because how did you explain overdue bills and cut off notices and late fees to someone whose biggest worry should have been if her favorite cartoon was on? I'm hungry, Lily said. The words knifed straight through Emma. I know, baby. She looked back at the cupboard. Crackers, peanut butter, dinner. Again, do you want peanut butter and crackers? Lily wrinkled her nose. We had that yesterday and the day before and the day before that. It's what we have, Emma said softly. A hot wave of shame flooded her chest. It hadn't always been like this. There had been a time when Lily's snacks were little cups of strawberries, cheese sticks, boxes of dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets in the freezer. When the apartment had been full of light and noise and half-finished craft projects on the table, and one tiny pair of sneakers by the door, not 3 black trash bags of hurriedly packed clothes. Before Jonah had turned their home into a war zone, before CPS had come, before the night she'd finally run. Can I draw your hair purple? Lily asked suddenly, digging through broken crayons, like a superhero. Emma forced a smile. Sure. Make it really purple. Lily brightened, grabbing a stubby violet crayon and bent over the page. Emma turned back to the counter, unscrewed the peanut butter lid, and scraped the bottom with trembling hands, trying to coax enough out to make the crackers look less pathetic. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Past due. Final warning. She flipped the screen face down. There was another message underneath it. This one from Jonah. You think you can just take my kid and disappear? You're insane. I will get her back. You have no idea who you're messing with. She silenced the phone, throat tight. She had tried for years to keep the peace. At first, Jonah's temper had been just that. A temper. Raised voice. Slammed door. Apology flowers the next day. Cheap bouquets from the corner store with petals that wilted within 24 hours. Like they knew they weren't meant to last. Then it had become holes in walls, broken plates, snapped phone chargers. Then it had been, if you just listened, if you just trusted me, if you just stopped talking to your stupid friends. And somewhere along the way, his anger had shifted from things to her. The first time his hand had closed around her wrist so hard it left a bruise shaped like his fingers. He'd cried afterward. That's not me, he'd said. You know that's not me. She'd believed him. Until the night it was her cheek, her shoulders, her ribs. Until the night Lily had stood in the hallway, clutching her stuffed unicorn. Eyes wide and silent as her father screamed inches from Emma's face, then threw a coffee mug that exploded on the wall next to Lily's head. That night, watching Lily shake while Jonah ranted about disrespect and loyalty, something inside Emma had finally broken beyond repair. If not for herself, then for the little girl who now sat on the kitchen floor coloring her mother with purple hair. She had packed 3 trash bags while Jonah slept off his rage on the couch. She had lifted Lily from her bed at 2 a.m, whispering, "We're going on a sleepover adventure, okay?" She had promised her daughter they were going somewhere safe. She had believed it. She didn't understand then how broken the safety net could be. Miss Carter, the stern caseworker, had said 3 weeks later, glasses sliding down his nose as he shuffled paperwork in a cramped office that smelled like burnt coffee and old toner. We cannot place you in a domestic violence shelter without some form of ID. I told you, Emma had said, voice thin with exhaustion. He took my wallet, my license, my social, my bank card, everything. I filed a police report. Yes, we have that in the system, he said, tapping a finger on the screen. But the shelters have protocols. So because I don't have a piece of plastic, I don't get a bed. The shelters are full, he corrected. There's a wait list. And yes, most require ID for safety reasons. Lily had sat on a plastic chair in the corner, swinging her legs, Barbie backpack at her feet. I have her birth certificate, Emma had tried. I have hospital paperwork from when she broke her arm last year. I have the caseworker had given her a look that was more tired than cruel. I'm sorry. I can put you on the list. You can try the city shelter on Broad, but it's first come, first served. And it's not ideal for children. Not ideal, Emma had echoed. Because what did that even mean when sleeping in a car in a Walmart parking lot was apparently the default backup plan? If not for Mrs. Garcia upstairs, her 70-year-old neighbor who had made them rice and beans and slid 20s under the door when she thought Emma wasn't looking. They might not have lasted even those extra 2 weeks in the apartment before the landlord had taped an eviction notice to the door. When the deputy had come to enforce it, he'd looked at Lily clinging to Emma's leg and said, "I'll give you till tomorrow morning, ma'am. That's the best I can do." By 9 a.m. the next day, Emma and Lily had stood on the sidewalk beside 3 trash bags and a cheap, scuffed suitcase, watching their life carried out in cardboard boxes as the landlord hovered on the stoop like they were an inconvenience he couldn't wait to banish. No family to fall back on. Her mom gone since she was 19. Her dad somewhere in Florida, last known phone number disconnected years ago. The few friends she had left either didn't believe her about Jonah or believed her and were too scared to get involved. So she'd done what too many women did. She'd put her kid in the back seat of a 12-year-old Honda with a check engine light that might as well have been a countdown timer, filled up the tank with the last of the cash in her checking account, and started driving, west, then north, then wherever the car would go. Motel for a few nights, until the money ran out. Then rest, stop bathrooms. Then Walmart parking lots. Turns out, when a guy with a temper has your social, your date of birth, and access to your bank account, it doesn't take long for shared finances to become code for you don't have a dime. He drained everything, leaving Emma with gas in the tank, a phone on one last prepaid month, and a daughter who asked too many questions Emma didn't know how to answer. "Mom, my tummy hurts," Lily whispered now, her voice cutting into the memory like a blade. Emma blinked back to the present, the highway, the wind, the lawyer still on the line. "I know, baby," she murmured, shifting the phone to her shoulder and holding Lily tighter. "We're almost there?" She wasn't sure if she meant the next town or absolute rock bottom. "Miss Carter," Daniel said, "are you still there?" "Yeah, you sound distressed." "Are you in a safe place?" She almost laughed again. Safe. The word felt like a joke. Define safe. I mean, is there any immediate danger? She scanned the horizon. No approaching cars close enough to worry about. No sign of Jonah. Though honestly, that threat felt more like a pressure at the back of her skull than someone she'd actually see on the side of a rural road hours from Albany. No danger. Just, she adjusted the backpack strap again, walking. "On the highway? Are you my mom?" He cleared his throat. "No. But if this call is going to change your life, I would prefer you not be hit by a truck in the process." The casual certainty in his voice, that this call could change her life, made something in her chest twist. "Look," she said, "I don't know any Margaret Lawson. And I definitely don't know why some rich lady would leave me anything, let alone more money than I can even imagine. So unless you've got the wrong person, you volunteered at St. Andrew's Community Shelter when you were 19, correct?" The word stopped her in her track. "Well, how do you know that?" "Ms. Lawson's will includes a note referencing a memory that only you and she would share. May I read it?" Emma swallowed. Her mouth was dry. "Go ahead," Daniel's voice softened as he read. "I want my attorney to confirm the identity of my heir by asking, do you remember the girl with the red hair who hid in the laundry room the night it snowed in April? The one who thought no one saw her crying?" The wind had nothing on the chill that shot through Emma's spine. She knew exactly which night that was. She could still smell the detergent, hear the hum of the dryers, feel the rough plastic of the laundry basket beneath her. At 19, she'd been a volunteer at St. Andrews, a cramped brick shelter tucked between a liquor store and a boarded-up bodega. She'd signed up to serve meals and fold donated clothes for extra credit in a social work class at community college. Back then, she'd still believed she could fix the world with forms and phone calls and enough compassion. Then there'd been that one freak spring storm, fat wet flakes coming down hard in late April, when the shelter had been over capacity. Cots in the hallway, people on chairs. She'd sneaked into the laundry room at 2 in the morning, overwhelmed by the smell of sweat and fear and hopelessness, and cried until her chest hurt. She'd thought she was alone. Until a soft voice from behind the dryers had said, It doesn't get easier, but you get stronger." She jumped, wiping her eyes. An older woman had stepped into view, wrapped in a faded pink cardigan, gray hair pulled into a loose bun. Her right hand had trembled as she clutched a chipped mug of coffee. Her left leg had a limp, dragging slightly. Emma had recognized her then. Margaret. The quiet woman who always sat in the back of the dining room, never caused trouble, never asked for seconds even when there was food left. "I'm sorry," Emma had said, embarrassed. "I didn't mean to. This is your space." Margaret had smiled, slow and kind. "Honey, you're doing the hard thing, helping. You're allowed to fall apart sometimes." They'd talked for almost an hour. About how Margaret had once had a house, a husband, a 9-to-5 job at an insurance office. About how illness and bills and a husband who couldn't handle either had stripped all that away. About being one unpaid invoice from the street. Emma had listened, tears drying on her cheeks, the washer sloshing softly behind them. When Margaret had shivered, Emma had run to the supply closet and dug out a thick gray hoodie from the donation bin, the softest thing she could find. "It's men's extra large," he'd said, holding it out. "But it's warm." Margaret had pressed the fabric to her cheek. "You didn't have to do that," she'd said. "Yeah," Emma had replied. "I did." At the end of the shift, Emma had walked Margaret all the way to the bus stop around the corner, holding an umbrella over both their heads while the snow turned to freezing rain. When the bus had arrived, Margaret had turned to her. "You are going to change someone's life one day," she'd said. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Emma had laughed, awkward. "I'm just folding shirts." "Not today," Margaret had said. "Today you saw me." Emma had thought about that night so many times, especially after her own life had tipped into the place where people looked through you instead of at you. Now, standing on the side of a 2-lane highway, phone pressed to her ear, wind biting at her cheeks, she whispered, "I remember her." "Then I believe we have the right Emma Carter," Daniel said quietly. Emma's knees felt weak. "Why me?" she whispered. "Ms. Lawson built a significant fortune over the last 2 decades through investments." Daniel said, "She never had children. She never remarried. In her words, many people handed her $1. You gave her your time, and that mattered. Emma closed her eyes. For a split second, she was back in that laundry room, 19 again, smelling fabric softener and cheap coffee. $48 million, she repeated, tasting the words like they might dissolve if she said them aloud. "Yes, ma'am. You realize I'm currently walking on the side of a road with a preschooler and $12 to my name, right?" There was a stunned silence on the other end. "I did not realize it was that bad," Daniel admitted. "Where are you?" "Somewhere between nowhere and the next small town," she said. "Heading toward a shelter someone at a church in Syracuse told me about. They said they might have a bed." "How far?" 7 miles, give or take, with a child." "Unless you're offering a helicopter." "Yeah, stay where you are," he said abruptly. "Don't walk any farther on the shoulder. I'm going to call the state police and request a welfare check. They can at least get you off the highway and somewhere safe until we figure out next steps." Everything in Emma bristled. "I'm not letting anyone take my kid," she snapped. "That is not what this is," he said firmly. "Miss Carter, I have handled enough estate cases to know when someone is trying to scam me. This is not that. I am looking at your file, at the police report about your ex-husband, at the eviction notice, at the CPS notes that say you left before things escalated further. You did the right thing. Now let someone help you." He said it like a person used to being obeyed. Emma wasn't used to that tone meaning anything other than danger. But this time there was something else under it. Not anger, not control. Something that sounded uncomfortably like genuine concern. "Fine," she exhaled. "But if anyone mentions taking my daughter, I'm walking." Noted. "Hey, Mom," Lily mumbled, half asleep. "Why'd you stop?" Emma kissed the top of her head. "Because," she whispered, more to herself than to Lily, "I think something might be changing." 2 hours later, the fluorescent lights in the small towner waiting room hummed overhead. It smelled like antiseptic, burnt coffee, and the rubber scent of old chairs. Lily sat next to Emma on a blue vinyl seat, wrapped in a scratchy hospital blanket, eyes half closed as she watched a cartoon silently on the mounted TV. The state trooper who'd picked them up had insisted they get Lily checked out. "She's pale," he'd said, worry folded into the lines around his mouth. "In kids that age, They crash fast if they're dehydrated. Turned out Lily had a mild fever and was a little dehydrated. Nothing life-threatening. But the nurse had insisted on keeping them a couple of hours to get some fluids in Lily and make sure Emma wasn't about to collapse from exhaustion. Emma hadn't argued. It was the first time in weeks she'd sat in a chair that wasn't in a parking lot. Her phone buzzed again. Daniel. Hello. Hello? How is your daughter? He asked without preamble. She'll live, Emma said softly, watching Lily's chest rise and fall. Fever. They gave her juice and crackers. She thinks this is some kind of weird adventure. Kids are resilient, he said. Yeah. Listen, he continued, his voice shifting back into business mode. I spoke with one of my contacts at a women's shelter network in Albany. They know your case. They were not happy you slipped through the cracks. They're reaching out to the shelter in the town you were heading towards to coordinate a safe place for you to stay tonight. So this isn't all just a prank. I have already emailed you scans of the first page of the will, he said. Check your inbox when you can. But no, Miss Carter, this is not a joke. Emma stared at the scuffed tile floor. How long does it take, she asked, to actually, get the money? There are processes, he said carefully. Probate, verification, tax filings. It can take months for everything to finalize. However, in light of your current circumstances, I am requesting an emergency release of a small portion of the estate. If you consider $300,000 small. Emma actually choked. 3. What? You need housing, food, transportation that isn't held together by prayer. We can arrange for immediate funds to be wired to an account in your name within 48 hours. Or we can issue a cashier's check if that's easier given your banking situation. I don't have a bank account anymore, she admitted, cheeks burning even though he couldn't see her. It got closed after everything. Bounced. That is fixable, he said. I can have our firm's financial advisor meet with you. Help set things up properly. You are about to receive wealth that could not only change your life but your daughter's children's lives. The phrase your daughter's children made Emma's vision swim. For so long, her horizon had shrunk to the next meal, the next safe parking lot, the next excuse to keep CPS from seeing the motel address on school forms. She'd stopped thinking about college funds, retirement, generational anything. Why didn't Margaret ever come find me? Emma asked, voice almost a whisper. She tried, Daniel said. In her way, she kept up with St. Andrew's newsletters. She asked about you whenever she visited. But you moved, changed numbers, and, he hesitated. Lawson had her own health issues. She was not as mobile in her later years. A nurse walked by checking monitors. When did she? Emma couldn't bring herself to say die. 3 weeks ago, he replied. Her last instructions to me were, find the purple-haired girl, even if it takes the rest of your career. Emma let out a shaky laugh. I never actually dyed my hair purple, she said. That was just Lily's drawing. Apparently it stuck in Miss Lawson's head. Emma looked at the ear doors. Somewhere beyond them, the world went on. People rushing to work, getting coffee, complaining about slow Wi-Fi. She thought of Jonah, probably raging into the void that his favorite punching bag had vanished. She thought of Mrs. Garcia, clutching her rosary as she slid folded bills into Emma's hand. She thought of the caseworker who'd said, not ideal for children, like it was the weather forecast. Daniel, she said quietly. Yes, what if? What if I don't want to just disappear into some mansion? He sounded genuinely surprised. Most people receiving this kind of news do not phrase it quite like that. I'm serious, she said. If this is real, if I am really about to have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, I don't want to just move to some gated community and pretend I was never walking down a highway with a kid-and-a-half empty water bottle. She struggled to find the words. I want to build something. What kind of something? A place where women like me don't get told no ID, no bed. A place where there's a room ready before the bruises fade. Where no one has to explain why she left, or why she stayed so long. There was a long pause on the line. Ms. Carter, Daniel said finally, his voice quieter than before. You may be the first beneficiary I've ever worked with whose first thought was not a new car but a new shelter. Her cheeks flushed, but with something close to pride. Is it stupid? She asked. No, he said. It's extraordinary. The news didn't break right away. Daniel insisted on discretion until the first emergency funds were secured, the basic legal structures in place. In the meantime, Emma and Lily were moved into a private room at the small town shelter, an old Victorian house that had been converted into a safe space for women and children. The paint peeled in some corners, the bed squeaked, the kitchen table wobbled. To Emma and Lily, it might as well have been a four-star hotel. Clean sheets, hot showers, a refrigerator with actual food. A case manager named Tasha, who looked at Emma without that thin layer of skeptical pity she'd grown used to. "You're doing everything right," Tasha said, sliding a mug of coffee across the table one morning, while Lily watched cartoons in the playroom. "You left. You protected your daughter. You're asking for help. That's not weakness. That's survival." Emma wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "Feels like failing," she admitted. "Failure's staying," Tasha said. "You didn't." When the first funds hit a brand new bank account, set up in Emma's name at a local branch where the manager shook her hand 3 times and offered her bottled water, Daniel sat with her at a conference table and slid a sleek folder across to her. "In here are options," he said. "Investment strategies, tax planning, charitable foundations, trust for Lily." The words blurred on the page. "This is a lot," she said. "We can go through it step by step," he assured her. "But there's something else I wanted to show you." He clicked his laptop, then turned the screen toward her. On it was a scanned, handwritten note in slightly shaky cursive. "Dear Emma, if you are reading this, it means my lawyer finally found you, stubborn girl. I told him you'd be hard to track down. You always looked like someone who could vanish if she wanted to. You gave me a sweatshirt in your time when you had very little of either to spare. You walked me under an umbrella when your own hair was getting soaked. You saw me when the world had decided I was furniture. People handed me dollars. You handed me dignity. I spent years thinking about how to thank you. It turned out I had longer than the doctors expect, long enough to build a nest out of dusty old investments and one lucky tech stock that went wild. I never had kids. My husband made sure of that when he left. So I chose you, not because you're perfect, because you're exactly the kind of person who will remember where you came from, who will sit on the floor with a woman crying in a laundry room and know she's not weak, just tired. I am leaving you what I can. Money is just numbers until you give it purpose. Use it to get safe. Use it to help others get safe. Use it to rest. You changed my life on a night you probably barely remember. Now it's my turn. If you ever doubt you deserve it, remember, you were the first person in a long time who made me feel human. With love." Margaret. Emma's vision blurred. She pressed her fingers to her mouth, breath shuddering. "Hey!" Tasha's voice came from the doorway. She'd stepped in quietly. "You okay?" Emma nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I thought I was invisible," she whispered. "I thought maybe I didn't matter to anyone but Lily." Tasha came around the table and squeezed her shoulder. "Looks like someone disagreed. The story might have stayed within the walls of that law firm and that shelter. A quiet miracle known only to a handful of people. But Tasha had a cousin who volunteered at a local community center. That cousin had a friend who ran a small nonprofit focused on domestic violence prevention. And that friend's teenage niece ran a TikTok account where she told stories untold about people who'd fallen through the cracks. The niece, all nervous energy and ring light glare, got permission to film a short anonymized video about a woman who went from walking down a highway with her kid to inheriting millions because of one act of kindness years ago. She didn't use names. She didn't use locations. She just told the story like it was something out of a movie. The video hit a nerve. Within a week, it had 8 million views. Comments flooded in. "This is what I want to believe about the world. Where can I donate to her shelterer crying at my desk right now?" A producer from a national morning show slid into the nonprofit's DM. "Is this story real?" By the time they reached Daniel, he'd already gotten 6 emails from reporters sniffing around the court filings, which were technically public record. He called Emma. "You're about to have a choice," he said. "Fame or privacy," she guessed. "Something like that," he said. "You can step into the spotlight, tell your story, raise awareness, maybe raise funds for whatever you're planning to build. Or you can say no and keep this as private as possible, understanding that the papers might still find some of the details." Emma looked around the shelter kitchen. A woman with a black eye stirred a pot of pasta on the stove. A little boy in Spider-Man pajamas zoomed a toy car across the table. Lily and another girl colored at the far end, whispering secrets and giggling. "I don't want to be a spectacle," she said. "I understand. But," she added, "if me being embarrassed on TV for a few minutes means this place, and places like it, get money and attention and maybe, I don't know, better laws, how do I say no to that?" The first time Emma sat under the harsh lights of a TV studio in New York City, makeup caked a little heavier than she liked, microphone clipped to a borrowed blazer, she thought she might throw up. The host, all perfect teeth and practiced empathy, leaned forward. "So Emma," she said, "3 months ago you were essentially homeless, walking along a highway with your daughter. And today you are the heir to a multi-million-dollar fortune. How does that feel?" Cameras zoomed in. Somewhere in the studio audience, someone sniffled. Emma took a breath. "Terrifying," she said. The host blinked, momentarily thrown. "Terrifying? Yes. Because nothing about my story should be a fairy tale," Emma said. "I'm grateful, don't get me wrong. Margaret's gift saved my life. It's going to save a lot of lives. But the real story isn't that I got lucky. It's that I had to get lucky. I had to have a random rich woman remember a small kindness from 10 years ago, just to get what my daughter and I should have had from the start. Safety, silence. People keep saying miracle," she went on. "But there are thousands of women out there right now who did everything right and didn't get a miracle. They packed the bags, they left, they asked for help, and there was no room at the shelter. No emergency funds. No lawyer calling them on the side of the road. If you're crying at home watching this, don't just cry for me, cry for them, then do something." The clip went viral before the episode finished airing. In the months that followed, Emma learned more about zoning laws, grant applications, and nonprofit board politics than she'd ever wanted to know. Daniel helped her set up the Lawson Carter Foundation, a structure that would ensure the bulk of the inheritance went towards sustainable, long-term projects, instead of disappearing in a few flashy years. She bought a house, not a mansion. A modest 3-bedroom place in a quiet Albany neighborhood with a big backyard, where Lily could run without fear, and a driveway where Emma could park a car that started every time she turned the key. She paid cash. Then she set her sights on something bigger. An old motel on the edge of town. Foreclosure sign leaning against the front office window. Weeds pushing through cracks in the parking lot. The kind of place people used to whisper about. The kind of place desperate women already ended up in. Paid for by men who told them they had nowhere else to go. Ma bought it. She tore out the musty carpets, scrubbed nicotine stains off the walls, replaced the locks on every door. She hired women from the shelter to help repaint, paying them a decent wage and offering flexible hours so they could attend court dates and counseling sessions. She had the swinging neon vacancy sign taken down and replaced with a simple lit sign that read, Haven House. No one turned away for lack of ID. Safety first, paperwork second, she told the staff. There were rules, of course, curfews, no drugs, no violent partners allowed on the property. There were also things she wished she'd had when she first ran. A small playroom with toys and books that weren't broken hand-me-downs. A closet full of clothes, sorted not just by size, but by job interview appropriateness. A room with computers and a printer, where women could fill out job applications, file for benefits, and print custody forms without feeding quarters into a public library machine. A little free pantry at the edge of the parking lot, stocked by the neighborhood, where anyone, resident or not, could take what they needed. A bulletin board covered in cards that said things like, "You are not crazy. You are not alone. You deserve to be safe." Emma walked the halls every day, sometimes with a clipboard, sometimes with a pot of coffee, sometimes with nothing but open ears. On the wall by the front desk hung a framed photo of Margaret, taken from an old ID Daniel had found, along with a copy of her letter. Under it, in simple black letters, were the words, "You changed my life. Let me help change yours." Women touched the glass sometimes as they walked by. One afternoon, a young woman with a baby on her hip stopped and stared at the photo for a long time. Emma stepped up beside her. "She helped you?" the woman asked. Emma smiled. "Yeah," she said softly, "she did. Of course, not everyone cheered. Online, anonymous comments swirled. Why did she get them? Plenty of people help the homeless. Bet she was a gold digger even then. Must be nice. I worked 2 jobs and no millionaire ever left me anything. Emma stopped reading the comments. Instead, she paid attention to the emails that came in from women across the country. I'm watching your interviews from a shelter in Ohio. Thank you for saying out loud what they did to us. I'm sitting in my car behind a grocery store with my kids right now. You made me feel less alone. I didn't leave when I should have, but I'm making a plan now. She couldn't respond to them all, but every time she walked through Haven House and saw a woman's shoulders drop an inch in relief, or heard a child laugh a big, unself-conscious laugh, or watched someone leave with a suitcase and a job lined up, and their head held a little higher, she thought of those unseen emails like a chorus. You did something. You made it matter. One cold evening the following November, almost exactly a year after the highway phone call, Emma stood in the courtyard of Haven House at their first ever Thanksgiving dinner. String lights twinkled overhead. Tables borrowed from 3 different churches were covered in mismatched tablecloths. Dishes from a dozen different cultures crowded every surface: mac and cheese, tamales, collard greens, biryani, green bean casserole, arroz con palo. Lily, now 5, ran between tables with a girl from down the block, both of them wearing paper turkey hats they'd made in school. Snowflakes drifted lazily in the air, not yet sticking, just hinting at the winter to come. Daniel stood off to the side, coat collar turned up, a paper plate in his hand. You actually did it, he said, nodding toward the house. You built the thing you talked about in that our waiting room. We built it, she corrected. You, Tasha, the women who painted these walls, the donors who gave $10 after watching a clip at midnight on their phones. He smiled. You know, he said thoughtfully, I had a colleague ask me last week if I thought Margaret knew what she was doing when she chose you. I told him she knew exactly. Emma watched as a new guest walked through the front gate, clutching a small duffel bag, eyes wide and scared in a way Emma recognized like a mirror. A staff member walked up to her, offered a hand, said something that made the woman's shoulders sag in relief. Emma turned back to Daniel. Sometimes, she said, when a woman comes in with nothing, I think about that laundry room, how I felt like my heart was breaking, and like it was selfish to be upset when I still had a bed waiting for me at home. If someone had told 19-year-old me that one hug and a hoodie would lead to this, you'd have called them crazy, he finished. She laughed softly. Yeah, I would have. Snowflakes brushed her eyelashes. She thought about how many nights she had sat in a car, staring at a dark sky, wondering if anyone even knew she existed. Now there were people in 12 states sleeping under roofs her foundation had helped fund. Shelters expanded. Transitional apartments opened. Legal aid clinics staffed. A small scholarship program commissioned for survivors going back to school. It still wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. Mom, Lily called, racing over. Can I sit with Ava's family? They have marshmallows on their sweet potatoes, Emma chuckled. Sure, Bug. Just save room for pie, pumpkin, and apple. Lily squealed and ran off. Emma watched her daughter join a table where no one flinched when a door slammed, where laughter rose purely from joy, not hysterical relief. I used to wish, she said quietly, more to herself than to Daniel, that I could forget everything. The fights, the fear, the hunger, the highway. And now, he asked, now I think, if I forgot, I wouldn't know how much this matters. She took a breath of cold air. I can't fix everything. I can't go back and rescue every version of me I could have been. But I can be here when someone else shows up shaking, with a kid on her hip, thinking she's invisible. She looked up at the glowing Haven House sign. And I can tell her, she murmured, you are not furniture. You are human, and you deserve to live. Some nights, when the house was quiet and Lily finally asleep in her pink-walled room, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, Alma would sit at the small desk in the corner of her bedroom and open a blank document. She'd type the same heading every time. Stories Untold. Below it, she'd start writing. About the woman who took 3 tries to leave and apologized every time. About the teenager who showed up with a garbage bag of clothes and a cat hidden under her hood. About the grandmother who'd finally had enough after 40 years. About a younger version of herself, walking into a laundry room with a heart full of outrage and a head full of social work theories, only to learn from a quiet woman in a pink cardigan what real grace looked like. These were the stories no headline could hold. No viral clip could really do justice. The world might remember her as the homeless woman who inherited millions, but Emma knew that wasn't the real story. The real story was 1,000 small moments, a hand extended, a couch offered for one night, a sandwich bought, a number dialed, a hoodie given, a stranger seen. Those were the places where lives turned. Those were the hinges of miracles. Right now, someone is out there walking their own dark road. Maybe it's a woman in your town parking her car behind a big box store so no one sees her kids sleeping in the back seat. Maybe it's a neighbor whose porch light you haven't seen on in a while. Maybe it's a coworker who flinches when a text comes in and laughs it off. Emma's story isn't a fairy tale. It's a reminder. One small act of kindness you barely remember could be the thing someone else never forgets. If this story moved you, do something with that feeling. Check in on a friend. Look up a local domestic violence shelter in your area and see what they need. Money, diapers, old phones, your time. Share this video so more people hear what happens when we refuse to look away. And if you want to hear more true stories like Emma's, stories the world almost never sees, hit that subscribe button, tap the bell so you don't miss the next one, and leave a comment with the words "Stories Untold" so we know you're with us. Because out there right now, someone thinks they're invisible. Let's prove them wrong.